Hello again. The video that I have already put together and will be uploaded for viewing on Sunday required, I thought, a little bit of explanation beforehand. I go out with the Olympus EM1 Mark II, which is filming this, and a couple of legacy lenses, vintage lenses. Now, one of them is a Pentax 30mm f3.5 preset lens, Pentax Practica screw thread, or M42 if you want to be technical. In a previous life, before the company was bought out by Pentax, it was known as the Meyer Optic Gauntlet Lidith, and it has a pretty good reputation. And bearing in mind that I'm using these lenses on a micro four thirds body at the moment, that's another story, I'll come on to that, I promise. This works out as a 60mm, very short telephoto lens, just a little bit longer than your standard 50mm. Quite a nice lens though, with a good reputation. So that's one lens that I used during the course of this video. Now the other lens I purchased complete with a camera, and I'm quite pleased with the package that I managed to get. Bought it locally, and it is this, the very famous Pentax Spotmatic. And I wanted to give you a rundown of the camera and, more importantly, the lens, because this lens, which is the one that I used on the EM1 Mark II, is the very famous 50mm Super Takumar f1.4 standard lens. Radioactive. There's a song there somewhere, I think. So these two lenses feature in Sunday's video, but I thought it was worthwhile, in particular with this lens, me explaining some of the issues, because you will see them in Sunday's video. Just let me attach it back to the camera. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do that, I may as well give you my appraisal of the Pentax Spotmatic range of cameras, and this one in particular. They are extremely popular and they are very, very famous. So without any more ado, I think it's time we put this on the table and gave you a close-up look at the Spotmatic, its features, none of which are out of the ordinary, and some of the issues that I am experiencing at the moment with this particular lens. So let's do that now. Well, here we are. I'm not going to exaggerate by saying the world-famous Pentax Spotmatic, because it really is. It was a landmark camera. Now, the prototype was introduced at Photokina in 1960, and at that time it was called the Spot-Matic. I'm not sure that there is an example actually left in existence. If there is, it'll be in some museum somewhere, but here's a photograph of it, and it's not a very high resolution image, sadly. But originally it was called the Spot-Matic because the intention was to fit it with a spot meter, and the implementation of that was unique at the time, and probably it was too far advanced. In later years, in the 1970s, I think they came out, the Leica CL had a spot meter which flipped down in front of the shutter curtain to allow for pretty accurate spot metering. But that was a good 20-25 years after the launch of the Spotmatic. Anyway, that idea was dropped. It was felt that it was going to be too complicated and probably too awkward for customers to make use of and get accurate exposure meter readings. So when the camera itself was launched to the public and ready to be shipped in 1964, it was called the Spotmatic. They kept the name the same, but they deleted the hyphen. So this is the advent of the world famous Asahi Pentax Spotmatic. Launched in '64. My particular example is from 1965, and I'll explain why and how I know that in a minute. But it really was a fabulously popular camera. In actual fact, in the 1960s, I think I'm right in saying that the number of Spotmatics sold outstripped the combined output of both Canon and Nikon. Many more of these were sold than either of those other manufacturers put together. Quite staggering, really. And it was used and received well, not just by amateurs, but professional photographers as well. So, on the top plate of the camera, working from the left-hand end, as if you were using it, you have a fold-out rewind handle. Beneath that you have a film reminder dial marked as being either empty or colour film or panchromatic. Anybody remember shooting panchromatic black and white film? Those were the days, eh? Next to that we've got an accessory cold shoe. Hot shoes did not exist in 1964, and this is removable. It's held in place by these two spring-loaded clips on either side, so once it's attached to the pentaprism, it's not going to fall off when you put a flash unit, a strobe unit on there. Next to that you have the shutter speed dial with speeds from 1,000th down to 1 second plus bulb, and inside the shutter speed dial, in this little window here, you have your film speed setting, the old ASA setting as it was back in the day. And in my particular example, which dates from 1965, not 64, the speed range here goes from 20 up to 1600 ASA. 1964 vintage ones had a more limited film speed range. Then you have the shutter release here, which is threaded for your tapered mechanical extension leads, and you have your film wind on and film counter next to that. Really nice smooth action on these. They're well known for being extremely well put together, mechanically very, very sound cameras. The front plate, you have your self-timer down here, which gives you the normal 10-second delay time. On the other side of the camera, because you've got no hot shoe back in the day, you have two flash lead terminals, one for electronic flash and the other one for bulbs. Next to them, on the side of the mirror box, you have the metering switch. It is stop-down metering in the Spotmatic, and it's an average light meter. Asahi decided that it was a much more reliable way for your average consumer to work out exposure rather than spot metering. So the lens, which is what I really wanted to concentrate on, it's the famous 50mm 1.4 Super Takumar. It is not the 8-element version. This is the 7-element version. And how can you tell? Well, it's quite easy to tell, and I'm going to put a couple of stills up for you just to make it clear. There are three things that you can look out for. First, the rear element on an 8-element lens actually protrudes proud of the back of the lens. I hope you can see that on my example it's flush. If this was an 8-element, there would be a slight domed piece of glass. The rear element is proud of the metalwork around it, so that's one point to look for. The second point you can look out for is on the auto and manual switch around the back of the camera lens. In the 7-element version, it is marked as being manual, MAN, or auto, if it were an 8-element version, it would be A and M, okay? And then the third and final giveaway is the little red infrared marker here. On my version, you can see that, well, I hope you can see, I'll put the still up for you as well. You can see that on my version, the red line is to the left of the number 4. If this was an 8-element version, then that line would be to the right of the number 4. Allegedly, when Pentax launched it, they were out to make the very best f1.4 standard lens on the market, period. And rumour has it that every lens, every 8-element lens that Pentax made, it cost them money to do it. And had they continued to make 8-element versions, the story goes that it may well have sent Asahi Pentax into bankruptcy. So they quietly removed the 8-element one and substituted this 7-element version in its place. Very quietly. There was no song and dance made about it for obvious reasons. So there we are. Now it's radioactive at the moment and it's yellow. Now the way to cure that, and I've recently bought this on the recommendation of Simon's UTAC. If you watch Simon's channel, he's got a fabulous channel for reviewing all sorts of vintage and legacy lenses. I've opted for this, which is a little LED light from a well-known furniture superstore. And this particular version that I've got is USB powered. Okay, and all I'm going to do is to plug it into a power bank and turn it on. And then all I am going to do over the next 48, 72 hours is to leave it like that with the light shining through it, and hopefully over that period of time the yellowing will reduce. That's the theory anyway, and I'll keep you updated and let you know as to how successful that is. Now I did mention that I've bought, if you've seen the post that I put on the channel a few days ago, I have purchased a Sony, I haven't actually got it yet, but I've purchased a Sony A7, the original A7 full frame body, and I've done that purely so that I can use these legacy lenses on a sensor size that they were intended for. In other words, this 50mm will act just like a 50mm on the Sony A7, and so will all the other legacy lenses that I'm starting to acquire. I just wanted to give them a fair shot on a full frame body. I have no doubt whatsoever that I'm going to hate the camera. You know, I disliked Sony's in the past, and I'm just going to have to put up with it for using it with legacy lenses. Well, there you are. When you see the video on Sunday, hopefully what I've shown you with regard to the lens as it stands at the moment will explain the colour casts that you can obviously see, in particular in all of the images where I used it wide open at f1.4. Obviously when you use a lens wide open, you're using the maximum amount of the imaging circle, and therefore any coloration or discoloration in the lens glass will show itself more obviously than when you use it stopped right down. And I think there's a couple of examples in the video. And that explains it. Now, I'm hoping that over the next 2 or 3 days, when I treat the lens as has been recommended to me, that it will remove some of that yellow cast. Fingers crossed, and time will tell. So there we are. I hope you get a little bit of information about the Pentax Spotmatics. It's a fantastically popular camera. Probably even more so was the K1000, which Pentax introduced in the 70s, which features the bayonet lens mount, the PK. bayonet mount, which, it has to be said, is a lot quicker to fit lenses to and take lenses off the camera using the bayonet mount as opposed to the screw thread mount. But nevertheless, Spotmatic is a fantastic camera. You can get them very, very reasonably these days, and I really do hope you enjoyed the video, and that you watch the video where I take it down to the waterfront and compare this lens with the 30mm Pentax f3.5. So for the time being, I'm going to say enjoy your photography, and I'll see you all very soon. Bye for now.